So I finally got to see the Indianapolis Supercross. And obviously, I did not see it when it was live because I was at the Shave Ice Cup at Hawaii Convention Center. So obviously, it took me a little long to get to seeing that. But of course, I was also wrapped up with the tail end of the UH men's basketball season. I'm going to try and not wait so long to do my recast for Supercross from now on. And it's going to take a little while, but hey, whatever. But a reminder, guys, remember, subscribe if you think that I'm worth listening to, or if you just want to see some more of my games. I hope to have one up later this week. But in the meantime, let's get into this. I'm going to start with the 250 class. Cole Davies sweeps. Seth Hammaker crashes in race 2. Seth needs another win at Birmingham. Now, I'll tell you this. Cole Davies, wow, there was no stopping him today. And he was looking really, really good through the whoops. And his whoop speed was probably off the charts. Maybe the fastest of anybody in the 250 class. And I'm not going to doubt if he was faster than the 450 guys. And I'll say this. Cole Davies finally winning was likely long overdue. He wasn't my pick for the championship. I thought it would be Seth Hammaker, like I said in some prior videos. And I thought Seth finished third overall. I thought he did okay, but with that crash in race 2, that obviously did him in, and he ended up finishing 9th. He also had that close call with Gavin Towers, and that did also bring up some complaints that the 450 class had about the track being too short. And I can sympathize there. I mean, sometimes these tracks have got to be a little longer, and they need to make the whoops more bigger, in my opinion. But, you know, obviously the pace has gotten much faster. And back in the days with the 252 strokes, there were times where some of the whoop sections didn't even break down, and they were just gobbling guys up. And to be frank, I think that's what that MX Sports and the track builders have to go back to, making the whoops not break down. Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but it's still possible if they can find the good resources, that is. So I'm looking for Seth to rebound at Birmingham. And the last time it was an East-West showdown before the final round in Vegas, or I should say Salt Lake City, Seth Hammaker won that one, and that was at Indianapolis. And I was looking for him to double up. But unfortunately, he didn't get the starts. And unfortunately, the start has kind of been life or death as of late for these guys, especially in the 250 class, which leads me to think that the tracks have to be more technical. They have to be more longer. And I also think that, if at all, there has to be a way to make the tracks extra technical, like I said, and also make the tracks harder to memorize, you know, kind of like the Daytona track back when Gary Bailey was designing it. You know, it's hard to memorize the course at Daytona, and that's what they need to do in the stadiums. And obviously, the stadiums, the football stadiums, whether it's football or baseball, you only have so much space, and obviously, you can only work with so much. But there is a way to confuse these guys on the tracks, and they need to look back on some prior designs and get some ideas there. Or, like I said in a prior video, turn to former racers and let them design their own tracks. You know, kind of like how we had in 08 and 09. Because the tracks these days have been really basic, and there isn't really new stuff to learn as well. So Dirtworks has got to go back to talking to some former racers about their own track designs. And that way, then we'll have a lot more flavor to the tracks and the series. But why MX Sports won't do that is completely beyond me, or Dirtworks, or whoever is behind all of that. But they need to talk to former racers about track design and make them add their own, and have them add their own flavor, their own track designs to add more flavor, like I said. But anyway, good on Cole Davies to win. He finally gets the red plate away from Pierce Brown. And Pierce had a not so great night. He had possibly a crash in the first race. And it was kind of an uphill battle from that point on for Pierce. But he made the most of it. And I look for him to rebound as well at Birmingham. And hopefully he will. Now to the 450 class. I'm going to try to keep it a little short today. Hunter Lawrence wins overall with a 2.41. Lapper talk was disrespectful by these guys, and they should be educated on Rick Ryan. As soon as I heard Tomac and some of the other guys have all these talks about lappers and how much they hold up and how much they kind of ruin the race, one part of me agreed there, but the latter part, I don't know. I don't think you can do anything about the lappers. They're trying to live their own dream. They're in their own race as well. And I sympathize with those who say that they kind of ruined their racing, who kind of ruined their own race or chances at the win. I mean, I can remember Phoenix 1998 when Jeremy McGrath was held up by lappers, and they were in their own race too, and they were also racing for points. And, you know, you can't really fault them today, but, you know, what happened with Hunter Lawrence and Cole Thompson, and also with Eli Tomac and Vince Freeze, those were close calls, and fortunately Tomac was able to keep it upright, and so was Hunter Lawrence when he had that incident with Cole Thompson. They were lucky to keep their bikes upright, and Freezy was lucky to keep his upright, but Cole Thompson wasn't as lucky. You know, but to hear them talk about the lappers and how much they ruined the race, that's completely disrespectful in my opinion. And it goes without, and in my view, it also goes without saying that all of these top guys don't know anything about Rick Ryan, and they should be educated on him because he's the only privateer to win a Supercross back in 1987 at Daytona. And it was muddy, and everyone was going down. Yamaha, Honda, Kawasaki, they all crashed out. And Ricky Ryan, as a privateer, he was struggling, broke, and he won the Daytona Supercross, and that really launched his career. So, I mean, are you going to pick any of these privateers to win the races today? Probably not, but still, I do think that they have to find a way to make the tracks longer, like I said earlier, and they do need to talk to former pros about their own track designs and what they do to the tracks to add more flavor. But as far as getting the privateers out of the sport, no, there's nothing you can do about that. We need the privateers for sure because that's an underdog story. And if they hit the podium at all, then that's a feel-good story for sure. I mean, look at Jacob Marsack in Daytona 2008 after Chad Reed's bike gave up the ghost with 3 turns to go. That moved Jacob Marsack up to the podium, and it was a Honda 1-2-3 sweep. And we need the privateers for a feel-good story. If they hit the podium, great. If they don't, then if they can finish up in the top 5, maybe even the top 10, that's a feel-good story. You know, you talk about privateers who can make a name for themselves. Look at Tim Ferry, 1999. He was doing really good in his second season so far for a privateer standpoint because he was on Nolene Yamaha, and he even made the top 5 at Indianapolis, and then, or I should say at New Orleans, and then he hit the podium at Indianapolis with the 3rd. Now, obviously, the field was a lot deeper back then, but still, for a privateer to make a decent living in this sport, they could do so. And I can remember also Ryan Clark back in 2003 when he almost got the top privateer honors. He was in that battle with Keith Johnson, but Keith Johnson ended up winning it after Ryan Clark didn't qualify at Las Vegas. But still, we need the privateers out there. They're a feel-good story, especially if they make the podium, let alone a top 5. But still, so to hear all that talk about the privateers from the top stars, that's completely disrespectful. And it goes without saying in my mind that those top stars don't know anything about Ricky Ryan, and they need to be educated on him before they jump to conclusions the way that they did. And I can sympathize with them for the racing, for them interfering with their races, but obviously it's racing. It's bound to happen sooner or later. And, you know, they're in their own race too, and they try their best to get out of the way, and you can't fault them for that. But to take the privateers out of the sport is kind of like watching a college basketball team with just the reserves playing and all the starters and all the main starters just watching for much of the game. You know, I mean, are you going to see a good game? Maybe, but still, that's also their time to shine and really come in on their own. And if they happen to put in good performances, who knows? They might get the rise that they were looking for with the factory support teams. You know, look at Ty Masterpool. I mean, obviously, the 450 class was depleted after Eli Tomac went down with its Achilles injury in 2023. But still, to see the privateers do well in motocross, that's a feel-good story for sure. And we need those feel-good stories, okay? There's nothing you can do about the privateers, but just suck it up and move on, okay? And that's where I'll leave it. And since I didn't mention much about the racing in the 450 class, I'll get that out of the way. Ken Roczen wins the first race. I thought that was a great ride for Kenny. He was able to get by Cooper Webb and finally beat the guy for a change. And unfortunately, he didn't fare well as well in the final 2 races, and that really did him in. But that second one, oh my goodness. I saw that second race crash, and there was nothing that Plessinger could do. And AP, I hope he's okay after that bad crash. He didn't take the start for the 3rd race, but he was so far out of the points, it wasn't too devastating for him anyway. But, you know, I could go on and on about the Triple Crown format needing to be changed and going by full point structure. But I've already kind of made my point about that in a prior video, so I won't go into detail, except to say that it would add a lot more incentive and it would make things a lot more interesting if they went by full point structure. So obviously that second race went to Justin Cooper. That was an inspiring ride out of him, and maybe the one race that he really needed to come into his own on the 450 and Supercross, because up until Seattle, I thought that was going to launch his season and he was going to start consistently fight for the podium. But unfortunately, things have gone south since then. And to see him chop that corner off before the whoops and get around Eli Tomac, wow, that was an incredible thing to do. I did not even see that pass coming, to be frank. And had Justin Cooper followed that up with a solid ride in the final moto of the day, he could have been in the winner's circle for the first time in the 450 class. And I really hope that he wins one, because if he doesn't win one, he'll know how Justin Brayton would have felt if he didn't win Daytona in 2018 after he won one of the Triple Crown races at Atlanta that year. And obviously, that would certainly have not been a good feeling. And that's more of the reason why I think that the main events and the Triple Crowns should count for something in the record books, which is why I think they need to go by full point structure to make the main events worth something in the record book. But that final race of the day had to have been one to forget for J-Coop all around. I mean, he got a good start, but it just seemed to me like he could not find a way to really ride consistently. Same went with Cooper Webb in that first race when he tried to block Eli Tomac and ended up making that mistake in the first race, like I said. But still, Cooper rode well. J-Coop I'm talking about. And hopefully that second moto ride or that second race ride might be what he needed to turn his season around at Birmingham. So hopefully that will happen, and we'll see how that goes. So anyway, guys, that's all for today. And remember, subscribe. I'll see you guys after Birmingham.